you say we go down to the arcade? It'll only cost you $20.
Sorry, I got a spelling test tomorrow.
Why are you being such a
Whoa,
Easy.
Despite having absolutely no childhood memories with any of the media produced for this franchise, I would somewhat consider myself a fan of the Get Along Gang, for lack of a better term. A while ago, I watched the original Get Along Gang special on YouTube, and I don't know, maybe it was the characters that appealed to me, but for whatever reason, I just found myself really enjoying the Nelvana special. For those who haven't seen my previous gag video, the Get Along Gang is a former American Greetings property created by their former character division, those characters from Cleveland. The franchise stars a group of 12 furries with some of the chunkiest character proportions to ever come out of the 80s. They live in the town of Green Meadow where they hang out in an abandoned train caboose. Most of the stories surrounding the gang are pretty lighthearted, and I found myself enjoying a lot of them. And even though I'm not the most social person out there, the Get Along Gang also does a good job of showing the importance of teamwork and friendship. The IP originally started off as a series of greeting cards. The cards themselves are super cute and very well drawn. As American Greetings wanted to expand the IP similar to what they did with Strawberry Shortcake and Care Bears, the Get Along Gang received a series of books published by Scholastic, a toy line produced by Tomy, 2 different Marvel comic series for both the US and the UK, and of course, an animated TV special that aired on Nickelodeon. My original Get Along Gang video I made was about me discussing the original Nelvana special, which is widely considered to be the pilot for the Get Along Gang series. Not only was the animation really good compared to most television cartoons, but the writing and music was also pretty decent. The characters also stand out in both design and personality, and they're mostly likable and very charming. So the greeting cards were good, the books were good, the original special was good. I just wish the show was good. Now let's just get this out of the way, and it's the fact that the Get Along Gang series was done by Deke Audiovisual, the French studio of Deke Entertainment, instead of Nelvana. So why the change in studio? Apparently, from what I've heard, when the gag series was being produced, Nelvana didn't actually have the money to produce their own animated series at the time. After the financial failure of the film Rock and Rule, Nelvana wasn't in the best position to the point where they almost went defunct. So basically what they did in the early 80s was that they would produce animated TV specials as well as a few live action programming. They would even produce some episodes of the famous Deke cartoon, Inspector Gadget. It's possible that Nelvana's relationship with Deke on Inspector Gadget might have caused them to give the gag show rights to Deke. Unlike Nelvana, Deke did have the budget to make their own animated series, so in theory, they were the perfect choice to make the series adaptation of the Get Along Gang. Though Nelvana would later be able to make their own animated series around 1985 with the animated Star Wars series, Droids and Ewoks. Though it does make me wonder, why didn't Nelvana just wait until they had the budget to make the gag series themselves? Well, I'm guessing it probably would have come out too late, as mid to late 1985 was when sales of the gag cards and toys started to decline. Besides, I think American Greetings would have rather had the show be out during the time of its peak, rather than on its slow decline. The series adaptation of the Get Along Gang would premiere on CBS from September 15th to December 8th, 1984, lasting for one season of 13 episodes, with 26 segments in total. Despite not having a lot of episodes, this was actually quite normal for a show to only have 13 episodes at the time. Considering how much I liked the special and books, how does the show fare? Well, spoiler alert, it's not that great. Though considering that I'm not the biggest fan of most 80s cartoons to begin with, my expectations were already pretty low. One of the biggest criticisms that the show receives nowadays would be its alleged lack of individualism. The show has received many infamy thanks to a famous quote from a television writer named Mark Evanier. According to him, television watch groups all seek to make KidVid more enriching and redeeming, at least by their definitions, and at the time, they had enough clout to cause the networks to yield. Consultants were brought in, and we, the folks who were writing cartoons, were ordered to include certain pro-social morals in our shows. At the time, the dominant pro-social moral was as follows: the group is always right, the complainer is always wrong. This was the message of far too many 80s cartoon shows. There was even a show for one season on CBS called The Get Along Gang, which was dedicated unabashedly to this principle. Each week, whichever member of the gang didn't get along with the others learned the errors of his or her ways. I don't believe you should always go with the group. What about thinking for yourself? What about developing your own personality and viewpoint? What about doing things because you decided they were the right thing to do, not because the majority ruled you out? Contrary to Mark's belief, the whole complainer is always wrong trope wasn't actually used all that much in the show. In fact, in some episodes, it's the complete opposite. It could be possible that Mark didn't actually watch the show and probably just assumed it followed the trend. Either that, or maybe I'm just missing the point. Honestly, I wouldn't blame him for thinking that it relies heavily on that trope, since the show's theme song does make the show look super preachy and sappy.
Get along, gang. Each one so special in his own way. Montgomery's the leader and he's such a good sport.
Get down here right now.
Yeah, I bet it looks pretty damn majestic from down there.
I'm not messing around. I have proven I can kick your ass while standing on a ladder.
I just go for a show, we'll figure it out. And that's the steer for the lead machine. Get up with the get along gang. Come on, there's a bitches going. Get up with the get along gang. Get along, gang. Let's rock, Caboose on its way. Get up with the get along, gang. Get up.
Even if the show were to heavily use the complainer is wrong trope, I still wouldn't consider it to be the show's main problem, because the real problem I have with this show is that it does not do the characters any justice whatsoever. For one thing, the series only focuses on the main 6 characters, rather than all 12 like in the books and special. I get that it was probably easier to stick with a certain amount of characters, but unfortunately, watching the same 6 characters can get old pretty fast. Granted, Breaker Turtle does hang out with the gang once in a while, but for some reason, he's not treated like he's part of the gang for some reason. The other 4 gang members are only resorted to cameos, and I don't think Lolly Squirrel even appears in this show. Not only are many characters missing in this show, but the characters who are there have sadly been flanderized. If you don't know what that means, flanderization is the process through which certain character traits of a fictional character becomes more exaggerated over time until it completely consumes the character. I get that each character is supposed to be flawed, but I feel like the show made them way too flawed. In the books and pilot, they usually have good reasons to be mad or upset with someone, but in the show, they pretty much argue for no reason, and they always seem to turn their backs on each other so much, to the point where calling themselves the Get Along Gang is very misleading. Honestly, their design differences, as well as their flanderization, makes the gang feel like completely different characters compared to their non-show appearances. First, we have Montgomery Moose, who we all know as the unofficial leader of the gang. He went from a clumsy, awkward, yet smart and kind leader to a mediocre leader who looks like he really wishes he weren't here right now. Honestly, while Monty is shown to be a decent person, he doesn't reprimand his fellow gang members whenever they do something wrong. And while his voice in the show sounds okay, it just doesn't have the same charm compared to his original voice.
Well, it doesn't matter to me who wins, as long as the whole gang has fun. Caboose.
I recognize most of the landmarks, but I don't see how he'd find the treasure.
Now keep in mind, most of the characters were voiced by child actors, so I'm gonna go easy on the voice acting, especially considering that their performances are actually pretty good. Next we have Ketchum Crocodile, the main antagonist of the franchise. While Ketchum is still the same troublemaking cheater like he was in the special, his voice now sounds like a generic bully character. I mean, it fits, but again, it just doesn't have the same charm as the original voice.
With my brains and your, with my brains and my plan, we can't lose.
I hate this game. Let's play basketball. I can beat you at that. We'll just borrow one from the Get Along Gang.
Bingo Beaver went from a gambler who often gets the gang in trouble, yet still caring about his friends, to a whiny butt monkey who the gang often bullies for almost the tiniest or accidental mistakes. Normally, the gang would have good reasons to scold at Bingo, such as betting on the clubhouse without their consent in the original special, but for most of the show, they pretty much treat him like garbage for little to no reason. And while his voice in the cartoon is not as good as the original special's voice...
So, Ketchum, who do you think's gonna win, Montgomery or Zipper? Okay, if one of the Get Along Gang wins and you lose, you have to clean our clubhouse for a whole year.
It is worth mentioning the actor who voiced Bingo in the show, since he's a voice actor that I really like.
You know it's in here somewhere. With this model airplane attached to my kite, I bet I win the contest for sure.
I nervously bite my toenails and they get stuck in my teeth. I'm so pale, you can see my veins. Look at my veins. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, look at my veins. I don't know what it's like to love or to be loved. That's why I go to bed at night wondering if I'm going to die alone. And of course, I will. Anyway, Where was I going with this? Oh, right. You can't handle the truth!
Yep, you heard it, folks. In the series adaptation, Bingo was voiced by a 14-year-old Scott Menville. Most of you probably know him best as the voice of Robin from both Teen Titans and Teen Titans Go, but it's so crazy that the voice of Robin also voiced Bingo at some point. Dottie Dog was pretty much my favorite gag character for many reasons, mostly because I really like dogs. But unfortunately, she's not my favorite character from the show. She went from being a careless, yet a fun, optimistic cheerleader to a bossy, spoiled brat who thinks the world revolves around her. She is probably one of the members of the gang who is the most out of character in this show. In the books and special, it was also shown that Dottie is some sort of mechanic, but in the show, that trait was given to Montgomery for some reason. Also, despite her flanderization, Dottie's voice in the show is surprisingly pretty good. It's neither an upgrade nor a downgrade to her original voice. You can't go wrong with either Dottie voice.
The Grand Prix Cup is worth 500 points. The race is today. Let's hear it for the Get-Along Gang. 1, 2, 3.
Wait a minute. There's some writing on the back. At 1 o'clock, stand at the shadow of the tree, then take 2 short steps and jump.
Fun fact, in the show, she's voiced by Bettina Bush, who would later go on to voice the title character of Rainbow Bright. Okay, I'm gonna be brutally honest with you. Is there anyone out there who actually likes Woolma Lamb? I've never cared about her at all, and how she's considered part of the main 6 is beyond me. Personally, I feel like Rocco and Lolly are much more interesting characters to me compared to Woolma. She's supposed to be this ballerina who's heavily obsessed with her vanity and beauty, but all she does is care about herself. She's probably the most selfish character in the show. I could also care less about her voice in both the special and the show.
It sounds disgusting. A purple cow, worth 150 points.
Hi, Portia. Don't you just love my kite? I think it's the most beautiful kite in the world.
Oh boy. Where do I begin with Zipper Cat? Now, Zipper is supposed to be an athletic sports jock who, despite being a little self-assured, is still a great friend to the gang. But in this show, he is a complete and utter bully who frequently targets Bingo for even over the smallest problems. I can't tell you how insanely mean and unlikable he is in most of the show. And his voice certainly doesn't help his case.
I'll make sure it's Zipper Ripple and not Mocha Moose. Ketchum, you must have written that on the list yourself. You cheated. Better than that. I'm gonna play by your rules and cheat.
Nice work, Bingo. Yeah, Bingo. We're fed up with your crazy habit.
The same thing can be said for pretty much all the other characters. They're such bratty kids who have very little redeeming social values. However, shockingly, there is at least one gang member who's actually not a spoiled backstabbing monster. I know I kind of made fun of Portia's voice in the special for sounding, well...
It sounds humongous. 1 phone booth off the growler, 100 points. Oh, well, what's the phone booth worth?
But despite her voice, she was actually a really sweet character with good intentions. And surprisingly, Portia Porcupine's actually the only gang member who's consistently likable in the show. Sure, some people might find her annoying, but she's actually shown to be a lot smarter and much nicer than the other gang members. Also, her voice in the show sounds so much better.
If no one will help me, then I'll do it myself. I'll build the biggest and best kite ever. I'll show him I'm not too little.
Overall, Portia is by far the only great character in the show, and I'll even admit she's better than everyone else. Honestly, the other gang members could easily lose to Portia in a contest of kindness, loyalty, and selflessness. So yeah, in terms of the series adaptation, Portia is my favorite gag character. Frank Welker, Don Messick, and Chuck McCann also did voice work on this show, and while their performances were great as always, they unfortunately couldn't save the show. As for where you can watch the series, for some reason there is no streaming service that has this show. Not even Tubi has it. There also doesn't seem to be any uploads from an official Wildbrain YouTube channel, unlike the other Deke shows. However, despite this, VHS tapes of the show have been released, though they are a little pricey compared to your average tape. And while there's no official uploads of the show, you could still easily watch the series on YouTube. There's also this DVD set that I bought on Amazon, which has all 13 episodes, though it is just a repackage of the Best of the Get Along Gang DVD. They just added a second disc that has the remaining episodes, which already came from the TV Tunes to Go DVD set. So if you ever have this DVD and wondered why the second disc has episodes from shows like Pole Position or Cops, Well, now you know. The Saturday morning cartoon adaptation of the Get Along Gang is probably considered to be the most polarizing thing to ever come out of the franchise. There's some people that have a lot of hatred for this cartoon, while others consider it to be the best 80s cartoon ever made. It does have a 7.1 out of 10 on IMDb, so maybe it is the best 80s cartoon ever made, who knows? Despite the character flanderizations, is this show really as good as everyone says it is? In this video, I'll be going over all 26 segments, explaining their plot. I'll also be giving each segment a score out of 5 stars. Let's begin. Episode 1A, Zipper's Millions. The gang are playing a round of baseball when Breaker shows up to give Zipper his telegram. So Zipper tells the gang that he's inherited some money, but if he doesn't claim it by noon, it will go to his cousin.
Zipper's got to claim the money by noon today or he'll lose it.
That's only 2 hours from now. Hindquarters is in the mountains.
What's interesting about the characters in this show is that they're not all similar in height like they are in the books and special. And while it makes sense to have characters like Portia be the shortest in the gang, it unfortunately means that we'll occasionally have some height inconsistencies, such as this shot. I mean, look at this. Montgomery's a freaking giant next to the girls. So Bingo accidentally tells the man that they'll be inheriting $100,000, which I'm sure won't be a problem later in the episode.
Just forget that last part, sir.
Zipper? $100,000.
It also seems like there's a shadowy figure out there trying to stop the gang. Who could it be? Well, whoever it is, they eventually kidnap Portia, then Woolma, and then Bingo. The trio are sent to a house in which they cannot escape, which turns out to be the home of Zipper's cousin, Miss Tabby. So they now start believing that Miss Tabby is the one who's stopping the gang. Meanwhile, Dottie gets kidnapped, and Zipper and Monty find the kidnapper's footprints.
Look, a cabin!
And the footprints lead right up to it.
When we find the person that owns that cabin,
I'm gonna whoop his ass.
After Dottie, Portia, Woolma, and Bingo try to get out of the house, the rock blocking the door falls and breaks the support of the house. So it's now up to Zipper, Monty, and Miss Tabby to save the other gang members. They rescue the gang, but not the house. It also turns out that Miss Tabby isn't the one who kidnapped the children, it was the whole townspeople. And while I would complain about how terrible the townspeople are in this episode, I'm gonna let Miss Tabby take over for me.
You destroyed my house! Endangered these children!
Since Miss Tabby's house got destroyed, Zipper lets her have the inheritance, so she could get a new house. I feel like what the townspeople did to the gang was incredibly mean, and I feel like they should have gotten arrested for it, especially considering that they kidnapped some of them. Also, this is one of the only times in the show where Zipper is actually likable, similar to how he was in the books. In fact, the whole gang is mostly likable in this episode. Overall, Zipper's Millions makes for a pretty good first impression, and it's great that the show started off on a pretty good episode. Episode 1B, Half a Map is Better Than None. We start off the segment with Dottie receiving a book from the sea captain. The gang found a treasure map inside the book, while Ketchum and Leland are outside overhearing the gang's conversation. They all fought over the map to the point where they split it in half. So now the gang has one half of the map and Ketchum has the other half. So now it's a matter of who can find the treasure first. They all find the treasure, but Ketchum and Leland swipe the chest.
What to do is spring the lock, and the treasure will be mine, mine, mine.
After them!
I saw your panties.
The Get-Along Gang got just what they deserve. You gotta keep your eyes open. This just ain't fair.
After getting in trouble, the gang saves Ketchum and Leland, but not the chest, which was already just a booby trap to begin with. They do eventually find the real treasure, but Ketchum's greediness causes the cave to collapse. Fortunately, they all escape. Some people call this show boring and bland, and after watching the segment, I can definitely understand why people think that. The episode itself is kinda boring to watch, but I do have to give the episode credit for making the gang likable in this one. Considering this was the second segment of the first episode, this segment was pretty okay. Episode 2A, Caboose on the Loose. Bingo and Portia are playing marbles when Bingo decides to bet.
I'll bet you all my marbles that I'll hit 3 with one shot.
You're on.
Ow!
Hey, what's going on here? Bingo's just betting the last dollar's marbles.
Oh, yeah? I'd say he lost his marbles years ago. Denton's for suckers, Bongo. If you keep it up, you're gonna lose more than your marbles.
You know what? Zipper is actually right for once. After all, gambling is definitely not one of the healthiest addictions to have.
We were walking through the park and saw a whole crowd of kids. They were signing up for a rowboat race tomorrow. And Montgomery signed up too. Montgomery won't win unless he's ready. We've all got to help him train. That's what I think. I know all about this.
Sometimes I wonder why we even let you be a part of this gang, you little shit.
So Montgomery is in the boat race, but sadly lost thanks to Ketchum's cheating. So now Ketchum won the boat race, which wouldn't be too bad if Bingo didn't bet Ketchum the clubhouse like he did in the original special.
Bingo had no right to bet the clubhouse without asking all of us first.
Bingo's word is the club's word, Dottie. As long as there wasn't any cheating, it's a fair bet.
Gambling never does anybody any good.
So Ketchum now owns the clubhouse, but Zipper goes over to Bingo to show him evidence that Ketchum cheated. Shenanigans ensue, and now the clubhouse starts moving. Meanwhile, the rest of the gang finds that their clubhouse is moving, so they try to follow it. With a little teamwork, the gang saved Bingo and the clubhouse. For being the first half of the second episode, it was a pretty good episode. Surprisingly, Zipper is actually shown to be a decent friend to Bingo in this. He doesn't scold Bingo all that much in this episode, and when he does, at least they are somewhat justified considering Bingo's gambling addiction. Though some aspects of this episode do feel a little too similar to the original Nelvana special. This is definitely one of the better episodes of the show. Episode 2B, Montgomery's Mechanical Marvel.
This had better be good.
Montgomery builds a robot for the science fair and shows it off to the gang.
Oh, this is so exciting. Come on, Montgomery, let's see it.
I want you to meet Hermie the robot.
We're pleased to meet you, Hermie.
Ketchum discovers Monty's science fair project, so he decides to copy his project by dressing Leland up as a robot. Meanwhile, the gang takes Hermie to Mr. Hoofnagel's. Unfortunately, Dottie had to butt in and take over Hermie, causing the gang to fight over the remote. So now the gang and Ketchum are in the science fair, where Ketchum decides to sabotage Montgomery's robot. After Hermie goes haywire, the gang try to stop him. They eventually catch Hermie and turn him off, and the day is saved. While the episode wasn't too bad, they could have made the writing a bit more interesting. It's really the only thing that makes this episode pretty weak. Episode 3A, Head in the Clouds. The Get Along gang are entering a kite flying contest, and Portia wants to help out, but the gang tells her that she's too little, much to her frustration.
I'm not too little.
Also, when it was decided the gang would make their own separate kites, none of Portia's friends were willing to help her out. Meanwhile, Bingo plans on cheating by putting a model airplane on his kite. Man, and I thought Ketchum was such a cheating loser. The contest happens the next day, and of course, like the ungrateful entitled brats they are in this show, they start trash talking to each other.
Anyone want to bet who wins? Your ugly kite doesn't stand a chance. That's right. My kite is obviously superior. Just keep your eyes on my tuna surprise, if you can.
It doesn't matter who wins. Having fun is what's important.
Speak for yourself,
Mother.
I plan to have my picture on the front page of the newspaper.
What she wants is a good kick in the pants.
So the contest begins, and Bingo's kite goes out of control. Fortunately, Portia uses her giant kite to rescue Bingo. The fact that Portia calls the gang
The best friend a big kid like me could ever wish for.
just makes me want to question her. Because this is pretty much one of the first instances of the gang becoming such entitled jerks. Not only are they a little harsh on Portia, but they also try to get a chance to badmouth each other for the sake of competition. Also, remember when I said that the rest of the gang could easily lose to Portia in a contest of kindness, loyalty, and selflessness? Well, this segment proves my point.
It gives me great pleasure to award you this medal for bravery.
I don't know what to say. Thank you.
Besides noticing how small Woolma is in this shot, I also noticed a human lady in the background. I guess this confirms that humans exist in the town of Green Meadow. Episode 3B, Hunt for the Beast. The gang goes out to swim in the lake, but the water's dried up.
Well, look at the bright side of things. At least we won't get our hair wet. Bingo, stop looking at the bright side of things. You got it.
Ugh, Zipper, could you not nag at Bingo for like 5 minutes? Because they aren't able to swim, Zipper sends the clubhouse to what he thought was the ocean while the gang were asleep. Unfortunately, he ends up sending them to the mountains.
Zipper, we're in the mountains.
Nonsense. We're at the beach. Look at this white sand. It's as white as the driven snow.
Just as cold, I'll bet.
Odd. It does seem a bit cold for the beach.
You think? Also, an elephant covered in snow shows up, but for some reason the characters see it as some sort of monster. It's not that hard to tell that it's an elephant. I mean, just look at the trunk.
Save me, Montgomery! I don't want to be eaten!
I would make a joke about how sexist this scene is, but considering the fact that sheep are prey animals, I guess I can give the show's writers some sort of pass. So the gang are sent to some lady's cabin for some hot chocolate and sandwiches. The quote-unquote monster kidnaps Zipper, so the gang starts to follow its tracks.
I'm glad we could borrow these scarves from Mrs. Whitworth. I especially like this color of blue. It matches my...
Wait a minute, but Woolma, didn't you say in the special that blue wasn't your type of color?
Blue just isn't my color.
I know the show isn't canon to the original special, but still. The gang finds Zipper's headband in front of the cave, and they go inside that cave.
Hey, Zipper!
Good.
The monster is revealed to be an elephant, surprisingly to no one, and Zipper turns out to be unharmed. At least this segment was better than the last one. Nothing too mean-spirited about it, it's just some fun snowy adventure. And that's really all I can say about this one. Episode 4, A. Woolma's Birthday. The title says it all. It's Woolma's birthday, and the gang are planning on throwing her a party. And just like almost every birthday-themed episode of any cartoon, the birthday boy or girl thinks their friends forgot and run away. So Woolma wanders off to town alone to visit her aunt. Back at the clubhouse, Dottie finds Woolma's note, and now the gang must come find her. Woolma discovers that her aunt is on vacation, and the next stop home isn't for a while. But she does eventually find a carnival around here.
That apple wasn't enough to eat. I'm hungry and... what smells so good? Oh, popcorn, peanuts. Oh, cotton candy. The carnival! Well, maybe this won't be such a bad birthday after all.
A gang of raccoons try to rob her until this skunk named Sammy shows up to stop them.
Hey, you okay, kid?
Yeah, sure, I'm okay. Who are you?
Oh, I'm Sammy Skunk. I work in a haunted house. I'm good at scaring people.
Wow, you sure scared them off.
You want to watch out for yourself around here? Come on, I'll show you around the carnival.
I don't know if I've got enough money to get in.
Oh, well, you could be my guest.
Meanwhile, the Get Along gang overhear the raccoons' conversation about Sammy and Woolma, which causes the gang to assume that Sammy kidnapped her. Woolma discovers that Sammy doesn't have any friends and that nobody celebrated his birthday.
Hey, I'll walk you to the bus stop.
Well, you don't have to do that.
Nah, I better. It's getting late and the waterfront isn't the safest place in the world.
Hey, I thought you said you don't believe in having friends.
Oh, I don't. This is, well, you talk too much.
The gang eventually finds Sammy, and despite him saving Montgomery's life, Monty still wants to know where Woolma is.
Are you guys okay?
Don't change the subject. Where's Woolma?
He saved your life, Montgomery.
I still want to know where Woolma is.
She's here.
Woolma!
You're safe. You guys came all the way out here because you were worried about me?
Of course we were worried about you, Woolma.
Oh, I guess you don't need a birthday party to know your friends care about you.
There's not a huge conflict in this segment, but the writing was actually pretty good, and this is probably the only time that I've ever really cared about Woolma as a character. Normally because of her vanity, I feel like she seems to only care about herself, but in this episode she is shown to sympathize with Sammy and even throws him a belated birthday party at the end. Though I will admit, it does kinda unintentionally send a bad message that it's okay for kids to trust strangers. Whoops. This is also one of the few episodes where the gang don't act like jerks. They are somewhat likable, though I do wish Montgomery at least thanked Sammy for saving his life. Despite its flawed message, this is probably one of my favorite segments, but let's see if any of the other episodes fare better. Episode 4B, The Get Along Detectives. We start off with the gang watching a romantic detective movie, much to Zipper and Bingo's disgust.
Mush.
I don't think I really know what I thought I knew. You knew.
I know Porsche's cup says soda, but for a second I thought it said sud on it. It's probably the video quality of this segment. After the movie's over, the gang decided that they would become detectives.
Give me a chocolate sundae, Mr. Crookniggle, with lots of nuts.
They open up their own detective agency and start listening to the radio. They soon discover that Sammy the Sneak, not the skunk, that's a completely different character, has escaped and is currently at large.
He escaped from prison today and was last seen wearing a pale blue trench coat. He is considered dangerous. That is all.
Well, what are we waiting for? Let's get organized. Montgomery, you put up that sign you painted. Bingo, you... Hey! Since when are you the boss on this cable? You got somebody else in mind?
What about Montgomery? He's the leader of the gang after all. If anything, he should be the boss in this case, not Zipper.
Come on, everybody! Let's get going! Where does a stranger go in town when he doesn't want to attract attention?
How about down by the docks?
Or maybe in one of those parks where there are lots of people around. Well, all right. I'll check out the waterfront. Dottie and Woolma can cover the parks. And Montgomery, you can... Ouch! Bingo! Look, there he is. That must be Sammy the Sneak.
While he is wearing a pale blue trench coat, it's definitely gotta be him. Okay, it turns out it's actually not Sammy the Sneak. But in the gang's defense, he was wearing a pale blue trench coat. Officer Growler scolds the gang, saying that they're too young to be doing detective work and that they should leave the work to real detectives. Back at the clubhouse, another pale blue trench coat wearing detective shows up and asks the gang for help in locating the stolen gold coins. Nothing suspicious here. The gang go out to search for the coins, until they see a wanted poster featuring the same detective that came to the clubhouse. So now that they found Sammy the Sneak, the gang must work together to catch him. Eventually, they succeed, and Sammy the Sneak is now locked behind bars.
From now on, just leave the crooks to me.
Don't worry, Officer Growler. From now on, the closest I'm gonna get to a crook is in my comic books.
Episode 5A, The Get Along Gang Go Hollywood. The Get Along Gang are at the airport to see Montgomery's Uncle Marty, who is a film director.
Hello, Uncle Marty. It's great to see you.
I'll bet this is your gang.
We are also introduced to Gary, the assistant director.
Time is money, Marty. I'm gonna get the bank set up. We'll be ready for you in 4 hours. Think you can be done with the kids?
I'll be there, Gary. Don't worry.
Gee, what a creepy guy.
Oh, Gary's a good assistant director. He's just a little over anxious about his work.
So Marty offers the gang parts in his movie, which causes a short rivalry between Woolma and a very out-of-character Dottie.
Montgomery's uncle just wants us to yell robbers and point.
Dear Dottie, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And I am going to be a star when this is over.
Oh, yeah? Well, I can outact you any day of the week.
Oh, no, you can't.
Okay, kids, we need you now. All I want you to do is look to your right, point, and yell, robbers!
So the filmmakers plan on filming a bank robbery scene using an actual bank. Unfortunately, the money that was used in the film was actual bank money, and was actually stolen during filming. As a result, Marty gets arrested after Officer Growler finds the bank money in his trailer. So now it's up to the gang to clear his name. Overall, the segment was pretty good for the most part. The only thing I didn't like about this segment was the brief scene where Dottie and Woolma try to one-up each other. Not only is Dottie just not the type of character to brag about being better at something, but the whole scene serves no real purpose to the main plot of the episode. This episode kind of reminds me of the DuckTales episode Hero for Hire, where the Beagle Boys trick Launchpad into robbing banks by pretending that they're making a movie. Granted, Hero for Hire came out 3 years after this episode, but either way, I feel like you're better off watching that episode instead of this one. Episode 5B, Them's the Breaks. Dottie's cousin Wilton is in town, so the gang wants to bring him to the picnic. Unfortunately, Dottie is not a fan of that idea.
Oh, gosh. You don't know my cousin Wilton. He's...
Oh, come on. It's always fun to have another kid along.
But he's not a kid. Cousin Wilton is old. And he's crotchety. He complains a lot, and
Then it'll be up to us to make him happy. That'll be our good deed for the day.
really? You guys are the greatest.
She does eventually agree to take Wilton to their picnic, so they use the caboose to pick him up.
Bingo. My cousin Wilton is a very fussy man. I don't want you to play any jokes on him. Do you understand?
Come on, everyone. Let's go meet Cousin Wilton.
Bingo, you stay with the caboose. And remember, no jokes or pranks, or else.
I find it funny how Zipper's part of the get-along gang, yet he's always bullying Bingo whenever possible, to the point where he even threatens to beat him up.
Bingo. My cousin Wilton is a very fussy man.
You already said that 18 seconds ago, Dottie. We get it. He's fussy. So Bingo decides to oil the brakes so the squeakiness wouldn't bother Wilton. Unfortunately, it backfires when Montgomery starts hitting the brakes, but it eventually stops after they enter an abandoned gold mine.
Oh, it looks like an abandoned mine.
Probably a gold mine.
Did you say gold mine?
Is that a ghost? But which way did we come in?
There's only one thing to do. We'll split up and find which way leads out.
Oh dear. Cousin Wilton, I do hope this isn't too much excitement for you. Why don't you rest in the clubhouse while we look around?
No, I'll help look.
Montgomery, why don't you and Bingo stay here and fix the brakes?
Nah, I want to explore. Bingo and I would be glad to help. Right, Bingo? It's the least I can do.
So the gang split up to find a way out of this mine, while also looking out for any ghosts.
I'll sure be glad when we're out of these creepy tunnels and back in Green Meadow. There's a ghost! A real ghost!
What a mess! We'll never get it fixed. Bingo, you've been stupid before, but this one beats them all.
Okay, Zipper. I'm going to politely ask you to shut the f*** up. It's not Bingo's fault he was trying to think about anyone other than himself. Maybe if Bingo knew the brakes wouldn't have worked, then sure, you have the right to be angry at him. But come on, it was just a big mistake, right? Buddy. Bingo finds a piece of gold in this mine, while Dottie and Woolma return to warn Monty and Zipper about a ghost. The mine starts collapsing after Bingo grabs a golden nugget, so the gang run inside their clubhouse to leave the area. Portia and Wilton are still somewhere in this mine, so the gang must find them. They turn out to be okay, as the rest of the gang finds them. The ghost is revealed to be just some prospector protecting his gold, and he eventually helps the gang find a way out of this mine. Overall, this episode feels like a generic Scooby-Doo style episode. Not to say that it was bad or anything, but I didn't care for it as much as the other episodes. Also, Zipper kind of ruined the episode for me. He's such a jerk in this show, and he almost never apologizes whenever he's constantly accusing Bingo.
I'm a new man, thanks to all of you.
Episode 6A, A Pinch of This and a Dash of That. The gang are helping out Portia with a school play that she's in, while Montgomery is playing with a chemistry set, trying to invent something. His experiment explodes, causing him to fly in the air.
Get down here and help us clean up this mess.
I can't. I accidentally spilled a drop of my new paint on myself, and here I am. I must have mixed up some sort of anti-gravity formula by mistake.
So Monty invented an anti-gravity formula by accident, which gives Bingo the idea of selling the formula. The gang start to play around with the formula, causing their items and furniture to float. After Bingo left the clubhouse early to try and sell it, Montgomery and the furniture started falling down as the formula wore off. Bingo visits the Stewart Airplane Company headquarters to meet Mr. Stewart. Unfortunately, he couldn't get past his secretary, who already tells him that he isn't here. Meanwhile, Montgomery's still at the clubhouse trying to remember how he made the formula, while Bingo meets the rest of the gang at Mr. Hoofniggle's, telling them what he was doing the whole time. After finding out from Dottie that Mr. Stewart will be coming to Portia's play, Bingo decides to come.
Montgomery, did you mix up a big batch of anti-gravity formula like I asked?
Well, not exactly.
But Mr. Stewart from the airplane factory is in the audience. once he sees my special demonstration, we'll be rich.
Wait, Bingo, there's something you should know.
He puts a little bit of the formula on Portia so he could impress Mr. Stewart. This causes Portia to fly all over the theater. Bingo gives Mr. Stewart the formula, and they both use it to fly to the airplane factory so they could sign a deal. Of course, what Bingo didn't realize was that the formula does eventually wear off, so they both end up not making the deal, and Bingo makes a new enemy. Episode 6B, Bingo's Tale. It's raining outside, so the gang are staying inside the clubhouse.
Look, Montgomery, are you gonna make a move or what?
Sure thing, Zipper.
Why are they playing checkers with both red pieces? In this segment, it is revealed that Bingo has a fear of water because he can't swim, much to the frustration of the other gang members.
Your fear of water is causing a lot of damage here. Just look!
It's not really Bingo's fault, Zipper. We've got to get this table fixed.
I can fix it.
Like you fixed these shelves last week?
So I made one little tiny mistake. I'll have this table fixed in no time.
Nice work, Bingo.
You ruined the table, Bingo.
Yeah, you and your chainsaw mouth.
Gee, I was just trying to help.
We can get a new table. It was a nice try, Bingo.
Not only does Bingo have a fear of swimming, but he also gets startled whenever it thunders outside. And despite Bingo apologizing to the gang for accidentally hurting their feet, the gang refuses to forgive him.
You're nothing but a lot of trouble, Bingo. Yeah, Bingo. We're fed up with your crazy habits.
Oh, yeah? Well, maybe I don't need everybody's nasty comments.
Well, we sure don't need you.
After the gang scolds him for pretty much existing, Bingo runs away. Shortly after, the gang hears Don Messick on the radio, in which he warns the town about how the dam is broken.
Teams of workers are at the dam, piling sandbags to prevent the dam from flooding the entire town. City officials are asking for volunteers to go to the dam to help.
Let's go to the dam. What about Bingo? Oh, he'll be all right.
Come on, gang. Let's get going.
So the gang decide to go to the dam and help out. On their way, they encounter Bingo again. They tell him that they need his help to repair the dam. Of course, Bingo understandably refuses to help the gang because of the way they treated him, though he did think they were lying about the dam being broken. The rest of the gang eventually find the dam as other people try to fix it. Bingo eventually shows up, now starting to realize that the gang weren't pulling his leg.
1 and a 2 and a...
Sorry, Dottie.
I saw panties.
He tells the gang that they're fixing the dam all wrong, and that they should be fixing at the bottom.
Can you fix it?
I can't.
Why not, Bingo?
Because if I go in the water, I'll drown.
Bingo, you won't drown.
Yes, I will. I know I will.
Well, if you're not gonna help, then get out of the way so we can. I can't believe he won't help us.
Oh, he's just scared, Portia.
Boy, what a mess. I know everybody needs my help, but I'm afraid to go in the water.
I guess Bingo changed his mind.
So Bingo accidentally falls into the water, and after realizing that he didn't drown, he starts swimming underwater so he could fix the dam. To make a long story short, the gang fixed the dam, and hopefully from what the other gang members learned, maybe they'll start treating Bingo a little better from now on. Right? No. Honestly, this is probably the Get Along gang at their worst. Not only do they not respect Bingo's inconveniences, but they also treat him like he's the worst person to ever exist on the face of the earth. Also, I just have to mention how terrible of a leader Montgomery is. Even when he tries to defend Bingo, it's not enough to stop the other gang from verbally bullying him. Even whenever Bingo stands up for himself, it's still not enough to convince the gang to give him at least some sort of respect. Sure, Bingo is not perfect by any means. Heck, I'll even go as far as to say he's no better than Woolma or Dottie. But flawed or not, nobody should be treated in this kind of manner.
Ow, We know. When you get excited, your tail flaps.
Yeah, that's it. I guess you're all mad at me again.
Bingo, you'll never change.
Episode 7A, Engineer Roary. Was he trying to grind Woolma?
F***ing Woolma again, huh, Bingo? Hey, Zipper, I was just trying to get a little something going here.
The Get-Along gang are skating around town, looking for something to do, until Portia finds a picture of a plane, train, and automobile. Portia convinces the gang to go to Roary Lyons' travel museum, but they soon discover that the museum hasn't been doing well financially, so the gang decide to help engineer Roary by looking for exhibits to bring to the museum.
Turn on the hose! I said turn on the hose!
We can't! We still can't start the motor, and that's what runs the water pump!
We never had this trouble with the old fire wagon.
Honestly, I could really care less about this episode. Kudos for making the gang a little more likable again, but overall it was just meh.
This museum is yours, like it was before, and I will tell you all the traveling stories I know.
Did you hear that, gang?
Yay! Hooray for Roary Lyons!
Episode 7B, Pick Up the Litter. The Get-Along gang are enjoying a nice swim in the swamp, admiring how much they love going here. Unfortunately, the city officials want to open up a new city dump in the swamp, much to the dismay of the gang. To make sure the swamp doesn't become the new city dump, the gang clean up the trash in the swamp. Ketchum Crocodile, on the other hand, has other plans.
Ketchum, you're awful. Why on earth would you want to mess up your own home like this?
Why? For the bucks.
The gang tells Ketchum that he can't leave all this trash everywhere, otherwise the city officials will turn his swamp into the new city dump. However, this just excites him, so now the gang decides to steal whatever trash Ketchum finds so he wouldn't bring it to the swamp. That plan was only a moderate success, as Ketchum still brought a lot of trash to the swamp. The gang eventually tells Ketchum that even if his swamp becomes a new city dump, he still wouldn't be able to sell his trash. The city officials came back to congratulate the gang for picking up the trash in Green Meadow, and in return, they agreed to move the new city dump somewhere else.
Well, I guess we'd better get started.
Overall, the gang are much more likable in this segment, and it also has a decent environmental message. It's not one of the most entertaining episodes out there, but it was just okay. I also like how Breaker is part of the gang for the first half of this segment. Again, one of the biggest problems I have with this show is its severe lack of the other gang members, so it's nice to see Breaker hanging out with the main six. But still, this episode was just alright.
Yay! We're gonna get a swamp back! Yeah! Who would have ever thought that Ketchum would be such a helpful guy?
And he's doing it all for one
What?
Episode 8A, Nose for News. The gang are in their clubhouse watching TV until they hear a special news report.
Right here at the Green Meadow TV station, some girl or boy will be selected as our very own Nose for News Kids reporter.
Yay!
So if any of you kids out there can find that award-winning news story, maybe you will be our star reporter.
So the gang must find their own award-winning news story. Unfortunately, only one person can win. Ketchum and Leland also heard about the news contest, so now Ketchum is wanting to win. Meanwhile, Dottie is working on her story, while her friends are helping out.
This is your hard-hitting investigative reporter, Dottie Dog, with one of the biggest stories of crime and corruption ever to be uncovered in Green Meadow. Wow, maybe she does have something.
Oh my, that's actually terrifying. I'm not sure who is responsible for animating this shot, but if they're watching this video, well, props to them for making Dottie look terrifying. I mean, look at her, she's pissed.
Now watch carefully. And there you have it. Plain, simple, outright theft. And by a police officer. At no time should we see him even attempting to pay for it.
Looks like Dottie's got the goods on Officer Growler. There goes my chances of being a star reporter.
Cut. Red-handed. Officer Growler, I'd like to speak to you.
I saw her panties.
Yes, just like all the others who are uncovered by top investigative reporters, this one doesn't want to talk to me.
Now, what's all this? I didn't want to be on camera with a mouthful of that apple I bought here.
What?
Sure. You see, I gave the grocer a $20 bill last week, and since he didn't have change, we agreed I'd just take an apple every day out of it.
And I appreciate your business, Officer Growler.
Oh, gee. I'm awfully sorry, Officer Growler.
About what, Dottie?
About jumping to conclusions. And there you have it, the story of how your local police department and local merchants cooperate for a better green meadow.
So Dottie's story fails, and now it's Bingo's turn to work on a story. But he was no better.
The Good Eats Cafe is under the careful management of one of the finest chefs in the country, Mr. Bernie Goodeats. As for the Good Eats Cafe's chocolate milkshakes, I'd say it was fair. All right. And the burgers, the chicken fried steak, and the blue plate special, in my humble opinion, just average. I'd give the vanilla a low rating, and the chocolate even lower. And the banana crunch is the worst I've ever tasted.
Honestly, Bingo would make a great IGN journalist. Overall, this was a good episode. The gang are likable for the most part, the writing was good, and honestly, I liked the concept of the characters trying to win a news report contest. I can't recall any other show using this concept, but they executed it pretty well in this one. Episode 8, The Lighthouse Pirates. The gang are at the dock working on a school project on marine life.
I feel sorry for those little fish.
Don't worry, we'll put them back in the water as soon as our project is done.
Sorry Dottie, I doubt most of these fish would even survive by then. Their friend Annie Otter shows up to help them, so the gang gets on their boat to search for more fish. They eventually return back to the dock, but unfortunately, Zipper couldn't find anything for his school project. Just then, 2 rodents show up asking the gang where Annie's boat was. So Zipper hears that Annie and the rats are going to the lighthouse, so he drags Bingo along in hopes that they'll find something for their school project.
Pull my finger.
Also, Portia's hungry, and boy, you don't want to mess with her while she's on an empty stomach. She's hangry.
You promised we could go to the refreshment stand.
In a minute, okay?
No, I'm just gonna take myself.
Officer Growler shows up to warn the gang about 2 rat criminals who are currently at large. Meanwhile, the boat has reached the lighthouse, and the rats force Zipper and Bingo to load their stuff in the lighthouse. The crates are revealed to be stolen items from the museum, so now the kids and Annie are in real danger.
Oh, we've been looking all over for you. I said I was going to the refreshment stand, but as usual, no one listens to me.
She's right, you little slobs.
After Portia tells the rest of the gang what happened to Zipper and Bingo, they all tell Officer Growler the whole story. As a result, the rats were eventually caught and the gang were reunited.
What's the matter, Zip?
I still haven't gotten anything from my science project. What's wrong with you?
I got this terrible itch. What's this? Oh yeah, that bird's nest in the lighthouse gears. This is a rare blue-footed booby bird feather. You want it?
Fantastic! We nailed the crooks, and I got my science project!
Wow, that was such an abrupt ending. Oh, 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 oh. Episode 9A. The wrong stuff. The gang sees a poster advertising an air show starring a pilot named Billy Beagle. The gang then tells Mr. Hoofnagel that they're going to see an air show, in which Hoofnagel reminisces on his glory days of being a pilot.
You were a pilot?
Yep. Back about 40 years ago, I was a flying ace. Those were the days. Barrel rolls, loop-de-loops. I was pretty hot stuff, if I do say so myself.
You must have been the best.
I was pretty good. Now, who wants ice cream? That was my plane. Beautiful Bertha. I still have the old girl in a barn near the airfield.
I'll bet you were as good as Billy Beagle.
Did someone mention my name?
Billy Beagle shows up, however, he is shown to have no respect for his elders. So Dottie suggests to the gang that they should restore Mr. Hoofnagel's plane and let him fly in the air show. However, Bingo and Woolma decide to join Billy, so now it's just Zipper, Dottie, Montgomery, and Portia.
Oh no! It's ruined! It's horrible!
So the rest of the gang spent their time restoring Hoofnagel's plane. Meanwhile, Billy is telling Bingo and Woolma all of his crazy stories. After restoration was completed, Mr. Hoofnagel was very happy to see his plane again. Even though he's not into the idea of him flying the air show, he eventually does agree, though I'm betting he probably did that just to shut these stupid kids up. This is probably the best Dottie-centered episode in the series. Not only is Dottie the most likable in this segment, but she also retains her original personality as well. Overall, this episode was pretty enjoyable to watch. Episode 9B, Uneasy Rider. We start with the gang riding their bikes until Portia sees a new bike at the window.
Wow! Come on, Portia. We're on our way to Hoofnagels.
It's beautiful. $5.
$5? I don't think bicycles cost $5, Portia. Breaker is looking to hire someone to take his job while he's on vacation, so Portia volunteers to do his paper route. At first she was having a tough time doing the route by herself, but the rest of the Get Along gang decide to help her out.
We'll help you deliver the papers.
All the papers? I guess we can do it.
I'd be happy to help, but the ink from the papers gets my beautiful hands dirty.
No way! I'm not delivering newspapers.
What'd you say, Bingo?
No way! That's for suckers.
Go deliver papers or get the out of here!
Okay, I was born to deliver papers.
Despite the gang trying to help Portia, they are anything but helpful.
Warning. Such behavior is irresponsible, immature, and very foolish.
Like seriously, they are extremely dumb in this episode. And even after they did such a piss poor job, they don't even see the errors of their ways, or even learn anything. Honestly, the gang should have gotten some sort of comeuppance in this episode for making Portia's job a living hell. So Portia decides to give up until Bingo decides to help her finish the rest of the paper route, even though he's mainly doing it just for the money and prize.
Here, Bingo. You did all the work. This money and the grand prize belong to you.
I got the money and the grand prize. I bet the grand prize is really grand.
Bingo Beaver, Portia might not have needed your help at all if you hadn't pulled that mean trick on her. That's right. You'd better share with Portia. Either give her the money or the grand prize.
Okay, I guess Dottie and Zipper are somewhat right for once. After all, Bingo did want to take her money and prize, so while normally I would defend Bingo and crap on Zipper and Dottie, at least Bingo is somewhat in the wrong this time. So Bingo gets the prize, which is a $50 junior bike.
Here it is, the grand prize, a $50 miniature racing bike.
Are you trying to tell me that this is $45 more than the bike from the window? How in the world can this junior bike be $50, but the bigger bike in the window is $5? Either Portia doesn't know how to count, or the writing in the segment makes absolutely no sense.
But it's too little for me.
Gee, Bingo, that's a really neat bike. Can I ride it sometime?
You know, with a bike this size, I bet Portia could learn to ride in no time.
Yeah. What do you say, Bingo?
No way.
But you just said earlier that...
But it's too little for me.
Overall, this episode was okay. I just wish Bingo was a little more unlikable in this episode. A very odd thing for me to say considering how I hate how mean-spirited the gang can be. But I feel like making Bingo a bit more of an anti-hero would have made all the scolding he gets a little more justified. I feel like the segment was trying to make Bingo the anti-hero, but he just doesn't come across as one for most of the episode. Man, this episode could have used some much better writing. Episode 10A, The Get Along Gang -1. The Get Along Gang decide to get out their emergency fund. Bingo wants to spend it on ice cream, however, Dottie tells him that they should only spend it in case of emergency. So after his idea gets rejected, Bingo pretends to be sick. The gang spent all their money so they could give Bingo ice cream, and once they found out that he was faking it, the rest of the gang are understandably pissed at him. Bingo abruptly leaves to head home, but now he realizes that he's moving away from Green Meadow.
Mom? Dad? What's going on?
Lee, you get these toys by the door packed up.
Hey, Grizz, look at this one. Some life light.
Put me down!
This one even talks.
Yeah, kind of funny looking though.
Bingo tries to tell the gang the bad news, however they are still upset about the mean trick he pulled on them. And because of this, they think he's lying. However, they later soon realize that he wasn't pulling their legs, so the gang decide to throw Bingo a farewell party.
You guys believe me?
Of course!
Yeah!
It's just that you fooled us so many times before.
I promise this is no gag.
Pretty much everything in this episode goes smoothly, and I'll admit, it'll be pretty disappointing to say goodbye to Bingo.
So long, Portia. Stick up for yourself. Woolma, you take care too. Montgomery, there'll never be another one like you. Dottie, keep smiling. And Zipper, my best buddy.
Go yourself.
I'll send you my new address as soon as I get there. So long, Get Along Gang.
Bye, Bingo. We'll never forget you. Wait, what?
Here we are. You know this is the shortest move we've ever done.
This is our new house?
Why didn't those moving guys tell Bingo that he was just moving a few blocks down the street? It's okay, Bingo. It's not your fault you misunderstood the whole moving situation. And since God wants us to forgive our friends, well, I guess that means I forgive you, Bingo. What about you, Get Along Gang? Do you forgive Bingo for his misunderstanding?
Don't tell me. The beavers are moving into Henry Hedgehog's old house. He fooled us again.
Oh, brother. Am I the only one who thinks Bingo needs to make new friends? Episode 10B, Camp Get Along. The boys are going on a camping trip. The girls want to join them, but as double standard as boys are, they won't let them. So the girls decide to go on their own camping trip to prove to those bigots that they can camp just as well as them. Meanwhile, karma hits the boys as they start struggling on their journey.
What's to eat? I'm starving.
Me too. All this fresh air makes me hungry.
Any air makes you hungry, Bingo.
Hey, where's all the food, Bingo?
Food? Oh yeah, food. I knew there was something. Well, it's not my fault. I can't be expected to remember everything.
Also, Bingo is extremely stupid in this episode. He's pretty much the reason the other boys are having trouble on this trip to begin with. Because of Bingo's stupidity, this makes Zipper a little more tolerable in this segment.
This is a waste of time. There's no stupid fish in here.
Okay, maybe Bingo isn't the only fathead in this episode. So Zipper falls into the river and the boys try to rescue him. On the other side of the river, Dottie also tries to save Zipper, which of course, she succeeds. You know, Zipper may be a jackass, but at least he's still a living being that needed to be rescued. Hopefully from all that trauma, he'll finally thank the girls and admit they can camp just as well as them.
What'd you have to go and do that for?
Excuse me?
I was just having a little fun. You girls are just pests.
Actually, forget what I just said earlier. Let's throw him back in the river. So now it starts to rain, and the boys' tent gets ruined, which means they crash into the girls' tent. However, the girls and boys start arguing and blaming each other.
You're the ones who made me lose that big fish. Oh yeah? Well,
After it stopped raining, Portia decided she had enough of the gang arguing all the time, and decides to take a walk instead. So after the gang stopped arguing, they realized that Portia was missing. So the gang decided to finally work together and put their differences aside, and go out and look for her. Unfortunately, they couldn't find Portia, but she does eventually return. So now the gang start to admit their mistakes and double standards, and they finally get along.
Boy, I can't wait to get home.
Episode 11A, Bingo's Pen Pal. The Get Along Gang are walking and talking about tomorrow's field day. Later on, Bingo gets a letter from his pen pal. However, he starts to worry. Why? Because apparently the letters that he sends to his pen pal, whose name's Susie by the way, are stretching the truth.
Then Bingo, my pen pal, started jogging 5 miles a day and became the top runner in his school. He loves exercise just like me. Well, here's a picture of Bingo.
Jeez, now I kinda understand why Zipper hates Bingo so much. So Bingo tries to talk Zipper into pretending to be him while his pen pal is visiting. Initially, Montgomery and Zipper respectfully decline, as they think Bingo should just tell the truth. However, Zipper eventually agrees after Bingo offers him a baseball. So now the gang meets Susie at the train station, and at first, she fell for the lie. However, Bingo starts to have second thoughts.
I know he was supposed to be me, but I kinda hoped she would guess that he wasn't. I guess I was too convincing. I hope Susie's having fun with me.
Oh, no you don't.
Huh?
You're in training. If you can get into shape enough just to win one event from Zipper, you can impress Susie.
Hey, I caught it! Here, Woolma. Hey, is that the best you can do? You girls aren't too strong. Here, Dottie, and try to put some muscle into it.
God, did Bingo not learn anything from the last episode? Well, to be fair, he was dumb as nails in the previous episode, so I guess he probably didn't.
I'll show you who's weak.
Look out! She's gonna let it go!
Dottie,
So
you're
long,
just
gay
kidding.
Bowser! Duck!
He eventually tells her the truth, and then the episode ends.
You thought I'd like someone just like myself? You know, athletes are fun, but I have other kinds of friends too. Besides, you make me laugh.
I do?
Sure. All that tumbling around that you do, that's great stuff. I want you to show me how you do it. You know, for a while you had me going. I thought it was for real, but nobody's that clumsy. Oh. That's our bingo!
Episode 11B, Follow the Leader. Outside the clubhouse, we see Zipper trying out his karate moves. Meanwhile, Ketchum and his partner Leland try to order food from a hot dog stand, but they have no money. However, if they do something that helps the hot dog guy's business, they'll be awarded free hot dogs. At school, the teacher tells the students that today's the annual Founders Day parade.
For the first time, we're going to have a float from the school, so we need to choose a float captain to be in charge of things. Now everyone, just write your name on a piece of paper and put it in the hat as it comes around.
Ketchum rigs the name drawing system, so now he automatically wins the job of float captain.
Patty cake, pasta man. Give me pasta power as fast as you can.
After becoming float captain, he forces the Get Along gang to work on the parade float, and knowing Ketchum, he does absolutely nothing to help out.
Hey, Ketchum, how about a hand here?
Why don't you call Bingo? Me and Leland are making some executive decisions.
Boy, and I thought Bingo was lazy.
The gang eventually finishes the float, and they do not like it. Portia later discovers that Ketchum's using the gang for his own selfish benefits, so she comes back to the clubhouse to tell the gang what he's really up to.
It's all a big trick. What are you talking about? The float. Ketchum just wants it that way so he can get free hot dogs from Ralph's. But he's got a sign and everything. I saw it.
Great. We're gonna look dumb tomorrow so Ketchum and Leland can get fat on hot dogs.
No. I've got an idea.
So now the parade starts as Ketchum and Leland are waiting for their float. They soon find their float. However, instead of seeing a hot dog float, it's now a whatever this is. I don't know what it is, but I kind of found this episode to be quite enjoyable. It was definitely better than the last few episodes, that's for sure. Episode 12A, School's Out. Not only is today the last day of school, but it's also the last day of the school itself, as classes will be starting in a new school building next year. Montgomery wants to volunteer in cleaning up the classroom on Saturday, much to the dismay of Bingo and Zipper.
Montgomery, did you say something?
Who's Joe and Mary? Also, look at the portrait behind the teacher. In the faraway view, it's some human-looking guy, but in the next shot, it's whatever this is. I mean, seriously, that's not even the same person. Since Bingo and Zipper want Monty to shut up, the teacher will now have to give everyone tests, and the person with the lowest score will automatically volunteer whether they like it or not. This of course intrigues Ketchum and Leland, to which they plan on rigging the test to make sure that the whole Get Along gang get the lowest score. As a result, the teacher makes the gang her new volunteers, much to the dismay of everyone but Monty. Also, the portrait guy just changed again in the next shot. It's a human again, but it's a completely different guy. So the gang points to Ketchum and Leland as the reasons they are currently in this mess.
All I want to know is how you guys managed to switch the test papers.
You'll have a lot of time to try and figure it out, Zipper.
Yeah, like all day Saturday.
Come on, Leland. We got work to do if we're gonna camp out in my backyard tonight.
We should have known they were behind this.
We're not gonna let them get away with this, are we? No way!
Despite Montgomery being okay with their fate, the rest of the gang decide to find a way to get Ketchum to clear their name behind Monty's back.
He wouldn't understand why we have to get Ketchum and Leland to confess about the test.
We don't want him to know about the surprise party, Woolma.
Bring in the chart, Portia. Woolma, you'll be in charge of getting the stage makeup, we'll need.
Check.
Zipper, you'll handle transportation. Got it. Bingo, you'll...
Later tonight, Ketchum and Leland are camping in their backyard. Also, why are all the checker pieces red? How are they able to tell who's who? So the gang plays a trick on each one, trying to get both of them to crack up.
You cheated the get-along gang, Leland. You must go back to Miss Deering and confess tomorrow morning.
I'm not sure I believe...
You dare question your conscience? Do I have to come over there and...
No, don't. I'll do it. I'll tell Miss Deering everything. Just... Hey!
I confess. I'll tell Miss Deering. I'll call her now. Just leave me alone. Ah!
So now the gang surprises Monty, because I guess it's his birthday now? Seriously, as much as I like this episode, the whole Montgomery's birthday surprise party thing feels like some sort of plot hole. I know Bingo mentioned some sort of surprise party for him, but not once have they ever explained it was his birthday. Anyways, the segment ends with the gang not having to help the teachers since they are proven innocent. Though Bingo does have to wash Officer Growler's car now after he stole his belongings yesterday. So Ketchum and Leland are now stuck packing the classroom after confessing to the teacher. Overall, the gang are very likable and tolerable in this episode. Unlike most episodes, they actually have a good reason to be mad, since they never did anything to deserve getting their tests switched out. The writing is a lot better in this segment, despite that whole Montgomery birthday plot hole that had me a little confused. I just wish the show itself was on par with this episode. Episode 12B, The Bullies. Remember when the Get-Along Gang dealt with bullies in the book The Get-Along Gang and the Big Bully? Well, unfortunately, this episode is not a cartoon adaptation of this book, but it does use a similar bully premise, just nowhere near as good as the Big Bully. We start off the gang at Mr. Hoofnagel's. This is where they stumble across these two pig sisters who are extremely mean for absolutely no reason. After that little incident at Hoofnagel's, Woolma explains to Montgomery that the pig sisters are new in town and that no one likes them. Gee, I wonder why. As the gang go to Riverside Park, Ketchum overheard their conversation about the pig sisters and decides to hire the sisters to make the gang's lives a living hell. Oddly enough, Dottie wants to fight back and make those sisters pay, while Montgomery wants to make peace with them.
Fighting isn't the answer. I have an idea. We're gonna make peace with them.
Peace? With those two? Impossible. I think it might work.
While I get Dottie's hatred for the pig sisters, I hate them too, but I just find her incredibly out of character in this segment because of how insanely ruthless she acts, even more so than any episode I've watched. If it were the original Dottie, she would have agreed with Monty in making peace with them, but in this episode, she's no better than the pig sisters. So Ketchum overhears Monty's plan to make peace, and warns the sisters that it's a trick. Of course, Monty's plan failed, so now it's Dottie's turn to do her plan, and go into straight up war with them. Though shortly before that happens, Zipper leaves so he can get ready for a showdown with the pig sisters.
We can't let them push us around. We have to stand up for our rights. We have to meet force with force. Now here's my plan. Montgomery and Portia, you'll move in on their left flank. Okay, let's get going. Look, there's more of us than there is of them. We can take whatever they dish out.
Wait a minute, let's think this over.
I'm not sure about this.
No talking in the ranks. Now get in formation.
Dang, Dottie is one nasty bitch. So Ketchum overhears the gang's conversation again and decides to snitch on them to Officer Growler.
Ready, halt!
So, you're back to pushing again.
Sorry, it was an accident.
It was deliberate.
Oh, I can't believe. Portia, we've got to rescue her from those bullies.
Portia!
Where are you? There she is.
Pull her out!
Good lord, the animation in this scene is so awful. So Officer Growler shows up and bans the gang from ever playing at the park. So now Ketchum's plan succeeded, as not only did he have the park to himself, but he also made two new friends. Or so he thought.
They want to play and have fun in our park? Let's give them a hand.
Yay!
Now for the fun!
Was this also part of your fantastic plan?
Stop your complaining.
Meanwhile, the gang are walking down the streets when Zipper returns to tell the gang that the sisters will get a taste of their own medicine. And here's how it all went.
Listen, you two, I know how you feel. I used to be just like you, a tough guy, without a friend in the world.
You? But you have all your friends to play with.
Yeah, but I used to be a loner. I thought nobody would like me, so I always was mean to them first. The Get Along gang taught me different. I don't know what I would have done without my pals. How about us being friends?
I have a friend?
And so do I!
So the Pig Sisters and the gang become good friends, and that's pretty much how the segment ends. Honestly, you're better off reading The Big Bully instead. Not only was the bully premise better executed in this book, but also the fact that the gang are much better characters in the overall book series. As for the Bullies, while it's not the worst episode I've seen, Dottie's bratty persona she has in this episode feels so forced and ruined the episode for me. Episode 13A, That's the Way the Cookie Crumbles. We start the segment with Portia running a lemonade stand.
When the duck walked up to the lemonade stand and he said to the man running the stand, "Hey, bum bum bum, got any grapes?" The man said, "Look, this is getting old. I mean, lemonade's all we've ever sold. Why not give it a go?" The duck said, "How about no?" Then he waddled away, waddle waddle. Then he waddled away, waddle waddle waddle. Then he waddled away, waddle waddle. Till the very next day, bum 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 bum.
Unfortunately, she hasn't sold any, though Dottie and Montgomery would show up to see what she's doing.
What are you trying to raise money for anyway?
I'm gonna buy my parents an anniversary gift.
That's really nice of you, and I may have something that'll help. I helped my grandmother bake these cookies from a special recipe. Here, try one.
These are the greatest.
They're all yours. You can sell them along with your lemonade.
Thanks! These will sell like crazy with my lemonade.
After Dottie gives Portia permission to sell her grandma's cookies, Portia's business starts to boom. So Portia tells the gang how successful the cookies were, and that she'll be able to afford her parents an anniversary gift if they help her make more. Of course, the gang decide to help her out, albeit just for the money. Ketchum and Leland overhear their plan and decide to lie to each gang member about them getting more money than their friends. So this causes the gang to have a little tiff during the baking process.
Yeah, and without my grandmother's recipe, you'd be president of nothing.
You're all forgetting who the super salesman is.
We're trying to.
Absolutely, Zipper. Go right ahead.
Well, I'm not working for any company where I'm not appreciated.
That goes double for me.
Normally, I get annoyed when the gang get angry at each other, considering how they constantly turn their backs on each other in this show. But in this episode, I can kinda excuse it since at least it was all just a misunderstanding. After all, Ketchum and Leland are the ones that got the gang into this mess. Speaking of Ketchum and Leland, after the gang left the clubhouse, the duo break and enter inside the clubhouse to steal their cookies. Honestly, if I were them, I probably would have stolen Dottie's grandmother's cookie recipe. Though I guess Ketchum isn't willing to bake them himself, so I guess just straight up stealing the cookies is somewhat more his character would do. Portia returns to the clubhouse to find that her cookies were stolen.
So I saw them running away with the cookies, and I came looking for you guys.
Boy, were we ever dumb.
They played us against each other, and we fell for it.
At least the gang are self-aware that they're total putts.
What's so funny, Montgomery?
I just thought of a way to make Ketchum and Leland want to give the cookies back.
Meanwhile, Ketchum and Leland are selling the stolen cookies. Officer Growler shows up, wondering what the boys were doing.
I was afraid you might be selling cookies.
Nope, not us.
We don't even like cookies. Right, Leland?
Yeah. Somebody's been selling bad cookies all over town. When I find them, I'm going to stick them in jail and throw away the key.
Hey Officer Growler, if you want to know where the bad cookie crooks are, just go visit Porcupine Peak where the Purple Pie Man lives. I'm sure he'll love to have you try his kohlrabi cookies. After finding out that Officer Growler is looking for a criminal selling bad cookies, Ketchum decides to frame the Get-Along gang by bringing the cookies back to their clubhouse. At first, he thought his plan worked, but it turned out Officer Growler was just joking and wanted to buy some. So the gang continued to sell their cookies as planned and decided to give all the money to Portia so she can finally buy that anniversary gift for her parents.
You're the only one who wanted the money for a good reason.
To go buy your parents the greatest anniversary gift ever.
You guys are the best friends in the whole world.
Episode 13B, Snowbound Showdown. The Get-Along gang are getting dressed to go to Pine Ridge. On the way, they meet Officer Growler, in which he tells them that his nephew is at Pine Ridge.
Little Dwayne, my nephew, is there right now.
Little Dwayne?
He's visiting Green Meadow, but doesn't know any kids. Maybe you could play with him.
More like babysit. Great, more chores.
That would be fun, Officer Growler.
Oh, no!
Great. And I'll treat you all to hot chocolate at Hoofniggles when you get back.
Oh, yes!
So the gang are at Pine Ridge, where they eventually meet Growler's nephew, Dwayne Johnson.
My name's Dwayne, but you can call me Duke.
Wow!
That was great!
Can you show me how to do that?
What a flip!
Big deal.
So the kids enjoy themselves in the snow while Zipper expresses jealousy towards Dwayne, who I guess we'll call him Duke from now on. Also, I don't think I've ever acknowledged this, but man, this show really goes heavy on its sound effects. This is very noticeable in the scene where the kids are catching snowflakes.
Hey, everybody! Let's catch snowflakes!
Pretty good, Zipper.
You try it, Duke.
You missed one.
Great catch! Wow!
You got every one.
After it starts to get dark, the kids are about to head out to Mr. Hoofniggles for some hot chocolate, until Duke tells the gang that he and Zipper will stay for a little longer. Meanwhile at Hoofniggles, the gang and Officer Growler are enjoying some nice warm cocoa, until they decide to go back to Pine Ridge to go look for Zipper and Duke. The gang and Officer Growler eventually find Zipper and Duke from the igloo, and that's pretty much how the segment and the whole gag cartoon ended. It's not one of my favorite episodes, but it definitely was a lot better than most of the segments we've watched. Even though this episode is in no way meant to be the conclusion of the series, it was the last episode that premiered, so at least the series ended on a decent note. Finally, I have watched all 13 episodes of the Get-Along Gang. What I thought was going to be a campy yet fun entertaining cartoon like Deke's Mario cartoons turned out to be an astonishingly mid-cartoon. The characters are honestly the worst thing about this show. The way the characters are written is so inconsistent. While there are a few episodes that portray the gang in a more likable and tolerable sense, there's also a bunch of episodes that heavily flanderize the characters to the point where they just don't feel like the Get-Along Gang anymore. A lot of times, some characters' behavior becomes way too out of character that they become almost mean-spirited in a way. To me, this feels more like a parody of the Get-Along Gang than an actual cartoon adaptation of it. It seemed like Deke wasn't on board with making this series, and it shows. Portia is really the only character in the show who's consistently good, and I'm glad the show at least has one character that doesn't infuriate me, and Sherry Lynn was the perfect choice to voice the character. Her sweet and childlike voice just fit the character and personality so well in my opinion, which the same can be said for the other gang members. They're just not good people. Montgomery hardly reprimands, Woolma's a diva, Dottie's a spoiled brat, Bingo's a complainer, and Zipper can go himself. I know not every character in a children's show has to be a good role model. Even the original versions of the characters weren't perfect. At least the original versions are good people at the end of the day. I feel like the Nelvana special portrayed the characters much better. What I liked about the Get-Along Gang initially is that they gave off the feeling that they're actually friends. Even when they get into conflict or if someone makes a bad mistake, they'll always be the best of friends even on their most difficult days. I just don't get that feeling in the cartoon. They feel more like acquaintances with a slightly toxic friendship. Maybe it's because it lacks the other 5 gang members, or maybe it's just because of the way the characters are written. Either way, the characters in the cartoon adaptation just don't feel nearly as human as the original versions do. Even though I personally prefer the Nelvana voices for the characters, I do have a lot of respect for this cartoon's voice cast. Now keep in mind that with the exception of Portia and Zipper, who were voiced by adults, the rest of the gang were voiced by child actors, so I can't really fault them for not sounding like the characters from the Nelvana special. In fact, the child actors they hired were actually not bad. Sparky Marcus did an okay job voicing Montgomery, even if most of the time he sounds bored out of his mind. Bettina Bush was a perfect choice for Dottie. I'm glad she was chosen for the part, since I feel like she gave out the best performance out of everyone else. And while Bingo's voice didn't sound quite right to me, it's always a treat hearing Scott Menville's voice since he is such a great actor. Same can't be said about Zipper though. Nothing against Robbie Lee or anything, she's wonderful, but I feel like her role as Zipper feels more like a miscast than anything else. Her Zipper voice sounds so obnoxious to listen to, and not in a good way. She also sounds way too much like a bully, which doesn't help the fact that the character she voiced was a grade A jerk. But despite my mixed feelings on the voice acting, I do highly respect the voice actors from the show. And it seemed like the voice actors really enjoyed doing this cartoon. 5 years ago on Twitter, Scott Menville acknowledged his role as Bingo on the gag series, in which he said that he had so much fun working with some of the show's other voice talents. In that same tweet, user ThumbSquid posted 2 images of the voice cast from during the show's production. One that originated from Robbie Lee's defunct website, and another photo that looks like it came from some sort of promo for the cartoon. Honestly, I love hearing voiceover stories like these, and the fact that the actors really enjoyed their roles makes me see this cartoon in a somewhat positive light. While the theme song is super preachy and not as catchy as John Sebastian's songs from the special, the overall scores that play in the episodes are a completely different story. It's unironically great. It's such a shame that there aren't any high quality versions of the tracks available, since the tracks that play in these episodes are always briefly obscured by either the vocals or the sound effects. Even though I personally think the Get Along Gang series is indeed a bad cartoon with poor grasps on its source material, at the end of the day, it's definitely not the worst cartoon out there. Considering that we live in a world with shows like Velma and the Doll Party cartoon, there is no way that the gag series is one of the worst, especially since despite its major problems, I actually kinda enjoy watching the show. It definitely falls under the so bad it's good motif, but even then, about half of the episodes were good. With Caboose on the loose, Nose for News, and That's the Way the Cookie Crumbles being some of my favorite episodes from the show. But even then, I just don't get the praise for this show. I always see YouTube comments from older cartoons of people saying that the modern cartoons are terrible and they can't compare. I understand why people say stuff like that when it comes to 90s, 2000s, or even 30s cartoons. However, I get more frustrated when I see comments like those on 80s cartoons. I get people are nostalgic for things they grew up with. Heck, I've watched many cartoons from many different generations and I happen to enjoy a lot of them. However, I just find it crazy how people think that 80s cartoons are better than modern ones. Seriously, how is the Get Along Gang better than something like Regular Show or Phineas and Ferb? What does this crappy show have that would make me choose it over Gravity Falls or Bob's Burgers? Simple answer, nothing. It's not that I don't like 80s cartoons, in fact, I love DuckTales, Pac-Man, Inspector Gadget, Garfield and Friends, The Mario Super Show, and even the Strawberry Shortcake specials. It's just, I just don't see the appeal of most of these 80s cartoons anymore. While a lot of the 80s cartoons have very creative ideas, most of them felt like sellouts to me, and because a lot of those cartoons were made to advertise toys and cereal, I just get the feeling that the people behind them just didn't put as much love and effort compared to the cartoons from other generations. I definitely want to be proven wrong since I happen to love 80s culture, but what's the point of watching something like Shirt Tales when I can watch better cartoons like Yogi Bear or SpongeBob? Also, I'm aware that the gag show was made at a time when television animation was really cheap, and that they were being moderated by television watch groups that demanded more educational values, which probably leads to another problem with this show, and that it was made for CBS in mind. There were some animated programs that aired on first-run syndication, such as Transformers, Thundercats, and Inspector Gadget. Those cartoons had looser restrictions than the cartoons that aired on a specific network, so maybe the quality of the gag series probably could have been much better if the show was syndicated with a little more creative freedom. But do you want to know what I think would have made the show better? If the show never existed at all. I know that sounds really harsh for me to say, but hear me out. Let's get Along Gang out of our heads for a bit and focus on another former American Greetings franchise, Strawberry Shortcake. Even in its heyday, the Strawberry Shortcake franchise never got a Saturday morning cartoon at the time. However, fans and consumers were treated to a half-hour animated special. There would be a new one that would air annually. What does this have to do with the Get Along Gang? Well, what if we never got the Get Along Gang series, but instead we got a series of specials all featuring the gang? Not only would they have a better grasp on the source material, be on par with the original Nelvana special, but they also could have been animated adaptations of the scholastic books that were out at the time. Honestly, if anyone were to get into the Get Along Gang series, I think you're way better off watching the original Nelvana special as well as reading the storybooks, because even though there are some good episodes from this show, the Saturday morning Get Along Gang cartoon is just not worth your time. Early on in the video, I mentioned that there's a gag comic series, one for the US and one for the UK. I did once read the US comics online at some point, but it's been a while since I have. But from what I remembered, they were a decent read. Not as good as the storybooks, but they were fine. But the UK version on the other hand, I would love to import these comics since not only do they have more original stories to tell, but they also seem to prominently feature all 12 characters, unlike the US comics where every issue but the first one only featured the main 6. Another interesting note about the UK comics is that even though the US comics only lasted for 6 issues from 1985 to 1986, the UK comics lasted for 93 issues from 1985 to 1987. Wow. I guess the gang were much more loved over there for it to have 93 issues. So the UK Gag comic series lasted until 1987 when they briefly merged with the UK Care Bears comics for a few issues. And that's pretty much the last documented time that the franchise has ever been active. I get it probably wasn't as successful as American Greetings' other properties at the time, but honestly, I found the Get Along Gang to be more appealing than Care Bears. It's been so long since the Get Along Gang had been active, and it's a shame it never caught on the same way as other greeting card series did. Because honestly, I feel like the Get Along Gang deserved better. Well, not on the same levels as Mario or anything, I like the Get Along Gang but not that much. I just wish it had a longer lasting impact the same way that other lesser known 80s properties did. The gang themselves are good characters, but they have the potential to even be better, and honestly, it's about time we get a better cartoon adaptation of this long forgotten series. I definitely think the gang deserves to make some sort of comeback. Actually, that almost happened a few times, with one major attempt being the abandoned 2005 relaunch, which would have included brand new characters in place of the original. A new cartoon was also going to happen for this relaunch, with a CG animated pilot even being produced. As much as I want to talk about the idea of a Get Along Gang revival, I'd rather save that for when I cover the 2005 reboot's pilot. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Let me know in the comments if you ever saw the Get Along Gang show as a kid, and what did you think of it? Do you agree with my thoughts, or was I being a little too harsh on it? Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you won't miss out on any of my future videos. And until next time, thank you for watching.
Leader and he's such a good sport. The Get Along